Welcome back to the Red Path. Today, I'm going to analyse a list sent to me by one of my top tier patrons, member of the Eightfold, Luke Dickin. Hello and thanks for being here. As stated, today I'm going to give my opinions on a list submitted by a patron of the channel and break it down piecemeal and see where, if anywhere, the list may be able to be further optimised. Kudos to Luke for being the first guinea pig for this. I hope I'm able to offer some insight and constructive criticism that helps with your list build, my friend. If you're interested in having a World Eaters list analysed on YouTube, consider becoming a patron of the channel. The perks differ by tier, and list analysis is available to the top bracket, but as time goes on, I will certainly be offering more perks as it becomes feasible to do so. Luke has provided this list as a competitive option, but I'm more than happy to review a list based on its fluffiness or any other metric you might want considered. Alright, let's crack on, shall we? I should have the list scrolling on the screen right now, and I'll break each component down in detail through the video, alongside some pictures of Luke's models. So let's start off with the HQs. First off, we've got Khan, and there's not much I can say about this swell guy. For reasons I've gone over ad nauseum, he's a must-take for a World Eater. He's not as reliable as we'd like in combat, but his reroll aura is absolutely killer on a 115 point model, when coupled with his other attributes, being a combat deterrent for starters. His strength is generally more reliant on what else is featured in a list, however. The second HQ choice is an Exalted Champion with Chain Axe and Combi Bolter, upgraded to Warlord with Violent Urgency and Gorefather. This is a pretty solid choice, and an Exalted Champ is always a great option for a combat-heavy Chaos Space Marine list. However, I'm definitely going to touch on this choice when I go over opportunities for improvement, and hopefully you'll see why then. Next, let's look at the troops. Berserkers, of course. So, Luke's gone for the 8-body build, which is always a great option, and it's hard to argue against it. Of the 3 identical squads, each has a Power Fist on the champion, and Chain Axe and Chainsword across the remainder, with an Icon of Wrath in there too. We all know what Berserkers do, but this is definitely another unit I think can be squeezed a little tighter for optimization, and again, we'll talk about it later. Now, let's check out supporting roles, elites, fast attacks, etc. Starting off, we've got a squad of 5 Red Butcher Terminators equipped with dual Lightning Claws and an Icon of Wrath. Solid choice. Hard to argue against, but I'm still going to try. For fast attack options, we've got a Blood Slaughterer, great choice, great model, and so damn World Eaters. Then we've got 2 squads of 10 Raptors, each with an Icon of Wrath and a Power Fist on the champion. Solid choices all round here, but I'm definitely going to touch on the efficiency of these. In the heavy support bracket, we've got 3 Rapier batteries, 2 with quad heavy bolters and 1 laser destroyer. I can definitely see where this list is going, even without Luke's explanation, which I'll get onto in a moment. Finally, we've got 3 Rhinos, of course, not much to say there, and a Helldrake. So, first thoughts, absolutely solid list. Just looking at it, I know what it's supposed to do. It's essentially built around the Blood Tide strategy I advocate for as a World Eaters player, and I honestly don't know if Luke's seen that video, but if he has, that's awesome. If he hasn't, that's also great because great minds think alike. It's got all the necessary tools to deal with most threats. Combat, check. Firepower, check. Mobility, check. The only area it's maybe a little short is dealing with a heavy armor list, lots of TA enemies for instance. The Laser Destroyer and Souped Up Zerkers or Butchers are really the only options to deal with a Leman Russ or Knight with any reliability, and Zerkers especially should be focusing on other units most of the time. So let's try and optimise it, shall we? I'll give my thoughts on how I change it and try to explain why. From the top, let's look at the Exalted Champion. So the champion runs a 2-up weapon skill, but he only has a 3-up ballistic skill. Also lacks an invulnerable or any real option to be tougher short of the Berserker Glaive. Whilst the Combi Bolter is a great option for its low cost, it's still not absolutely ideal on a unit that probably wants to hit combat at some point. Due to the Exalted Champion wanting to be within 6 inches of any combats, they're likely going to want to get stuck in themselves, and especially when you're putting a relic option on them. You need to max them out for the kills. I truly favour a Chain Axe Chainsword combo on the Exalted Champion. It leaves the option for Gorefather, but is otherwise a cheap and effective upgrade that fully utilises the champion's native buffs, reroll failed hits against characters for themselves, and reroll all failed wounds within 6 inches. This keeps the cost down and provides just one more reasonable attack at -1 AP that will stack with any other buffs provided, plus it saves a few points. Violent Urgency isn't my favourite Warlord trait, I'll be honest, but I think in this list it probably is the best fit. Certainly once I've gone over the minor, and I mean minor, improvements that I think can be made. Next, let's look at the Berserkers. So, I'm all about MSU at the moment. I think they may be playing having one big squad of closer to even 20 models, depending on how the meta shakes out with things like Mortarion. But at the moment, having more OBSEC units available to spread over the board is just absolutely vital in my opinion. 3 8-body squads of Berserkers can only capture 3 objectives, whereas 5 5-body squads can capture 5. In some missions, having that second wave of crazed murderers leaping into the fray behind the first charge can be game swinging. On top of that, with smaller battle spaces and more terrain, I find the icons just unnecessary at the moment. The Power Fist is an interesting choice, and I see the value, but I feel the Lightning Claw offers better output, and is even comparable against vehicles. The extra 2 attacks, more accuracy, and rerolls to wound without an exalted champion nearby allows a little more independence for the Berserkers, meaning they're not tied together in a big clump. Claws are also 5 points cheaper. So here's how I'd mix this up. Currently, 3x8 squads is costing 488 points for 24 bodies. If we drop the icons, replace the fists and change to MSU, we can get 25 bodies for 470 points. So, we save 18 points, gain an extra wound, gain more versatility capping objectives, make enemy fire less effective, remove almost all morale issues, and by adding 2 extra aspiring champions, gain an additional 8 attacks over 2 activations per round, which could rapidly add up, and that's not even including the other 6 attacks afforded by the other 3 champions' claws. The free 18 points could easily pay for an additional Berserker in a squad if you wanted. And by using transports, line of sight blocking terrain and violent urgency, those charges shouldn't really be a problem, making the icons not be missed. But for now, let's assume a savings of 18 points with an improvement in efficiency. The next unit we're going to look at is the Red Butchers. It's hard to complain about this unit, but I'm going to try, so hear me out. There's basically 2 schools of thought for Red Butchers right now. Well, okay, there's 3, but we're focusing on 2. The Dual Lightning Claw versus the Claw Bolter school. As of this video, neither the claws nor the bolters cost anything extra on the butchers, so the argument here is different to other units where the second claw costs 5 points for 1 extra attack. However, even with red butchers paid for and that 1 extra attack at -2 becoming 2 extra attacks at -2, is it absolutely necessary in replacing 20 bolter shots? I cannot stress enough the value of 20 bolter rounds from a blob of Terminators. Always firing at rapid fire is immense, and given the general lack of anti-chaff shooting in this list, it could come in clutch. I won't necessarily argue that it's better, because I'll be proven wrong if Luke takes my advice, and then he'll be in a tournament and the extra claw attack would have ended up being what he should have had to win the tournament. But look, consider the bolter fire. I just think that 20 strength 4 range shots will come in useful more often than an additional 10 lightning claw attacks, but that's just me. Next, the fast attack options. So, the Blood Slaughterer is equipped with the Harpoon and Blade, and this is, in my opinion, the right build. Can't really fault this. Sure, the Slaughterer performs a little better with Demon Engine buffs provided by something like a Disco Lord, but as a single threat here, I think the role is perhaps more of a distraction Carnifex, hoping to draw some fire and deal some damage, buying time for the main force to get into range. And onto the Raptors. I've been a fan of these for such a long time now, mentioning them as a top 5 unit back in October of 2020 in my first video on the channel, and highlighting their potential the month before when we knew the changes to Melter and Chainswords were coming. Due to slot limitations, I can't recommend splitting into small squads, and you know what, I'm actually a fan of large blobs of these. Personally, I'd run 5 and 15. The 5 to grab an objective with Apoplectic Frenzy turn 1, ready for turn 2, and the 15 to go harass the enemy with a potential turn 1 charge, or to hide somewhere and wait as a threat, staking ownership of an area of the table. Now, my same issue with Power Fist crops up, and I'd actually suggest dropping them again. The 20 points spent may not really account for much of anything game-wise, especially until they're boosted to 2 wounds. As Power Armor Marines, they still fall to a stiff breeze, so that's a definite consideration. I think Melter would be a better use of points as it's more likely to really deal damage. It doesn't suffer the -1 to hit, they both have a max damage of 8, the Melter has -4 AP compared to -3 on the fist, and they're the same points. So to tweak this, I'd run 5 bare bones and 15 with 2 Melter guns and a combi Melter on the champ. I'd drop the icon on the small squad but keep it on the large. The points stay the same, but your anti-armor opportunity has increased its ceiling by 50% overall damage, 3 Melter profiles versus 2 power fists, and is considerably more accurate. In combat, the 15 body squad will chew through most infantry with, I think, 59 attacks, 53 of them with -1 AP. The Melter Raptors, of course, won't have AP in combat. And as it's a maxed out squad, it will reap the benefits of any stratagems you pile on top. Meanwhile, your sneaky 5 body squad can jump around and nab objectives early on. Let's look at the big guns now. And I am happy to see these entries. I'm a big fan of the rapier batteries and especially the quad heavy bolter. I think it has great efficiency, pumping out 12 heavy bolter rounds at only 85 points, which, when compared to the same firepower from Havocs, you pay 125 points minimum for the same wounds and toughness. Plus, with the rapier you get 2 marines with their bolt guns in addition. It's a much better choice. I can't fault the heavy bolter options here, I'm all for it. The laser destroyer clocks in a little more expensive at 120 points, but does offer 3 super las cannon shots at strength 10, -4 AP and D3 plus 3 damage. I think this is a really solid weapons profile, and if we were to compare it to just 3 las cannon Havocs, they would cost 96 points for 3 weaker, less reliable shots and also have 2 less wounds. I'm definitely okay with this life choice, I'll be honest. The only issue I have is that I'm personally a stickler for unit consistency. It's nothing to do with optimization. I just have this issue where all my units of a type have to be equipped consistently, else I'll forget what they have and mess my rules up. But that's not a criticism of Luke's list, it's just my own ineptitude. Finally, we have 3 rhinos. They do what you expect, no issues here. There's berserkers in the list, and then they need a metal box to move them. Job done. And the final choice is a Helldrake, which yep, I'm okay with. Sure, Asher Marines has sold me on the Hellblades or Helltalon, whichever one it is, but I still like the Drake, and right now they've got potential. The Blades have pretty much set rules until GW ever decides to update Imperial Armour again, but the Helldrake is likely to get reasonably different rules here before long. Now, they could turn into absolute garbage, but I'm hopeful they'll gain a new role, especially gaining Legion trait access. Alright, so let's go over Luke's theory hammer for how the list works, then factor in my suggested optimizations and see what else can be done. Let me read what he wrote. Obviously, the plan is Khan lives with the rapiers to make people think twice about charging whilst providing rerolls. Priority targets being enemy transports to release the skulls in waiting from their hard shells. Apoplectic Frenzy on the Raptors hopefully means turn 1 there will be 20 guys with 2 power fists and a Helldrake in their lines. Zerkers move up in Rhinos as a second wave along with the Warlord hitting turn 2 or 3. Rhinos can then be used to hold objectives while I keep the forward edge of battle as close to the enemy DZ as possible. Butchers and the Blood Slaughterer are the rapid response units deep striking in with the Butchers, and the Auto 6 advance for Scuttling Gate means it moves pretty quickly to wherever I need it. I think this has enough to cause a headache for some opponents, especially if they don't bring enough screening units, but I don't think it will win an LVO anytime soon. There's a slight temptation to swap out the heavy bolter rapiers for a second laser destroyer and a screening blob of cultists to sit with Khan and the rapiers, but I will then need to lose an Icon of Wrath from a unit to make up the points. So, first off, Luke's list clocks in at 1,980 points, but with my adjustments it comes down to 1,961, a savings of 19 points, but with the following improvements. Better combat efficiency on the Exalted Champion, an extra Berserker body and an extra 24 total attacks between Berserkers by adding 2 champions and swapping fists for claws. A higher anti-tank damage ceiling of 24 versus 16 with 3 Melter over 2 fists in the Raptors. A more efficient stratagem target with the 15 blob of Raptors. Leaves 39 points spare, which is enough to make some decisions with. With those 39 points, there's not much you can really do. There's no space for spawn and cultists clock in at 60 points minimum, so let's think about some other options. 1. You could buy 2 more Berserkers for 36 points and have a squad of 7. Just say the Exalted Champion is the true squad leader. That would help fill up that third Rhino too. 2. You could get one additional red butcher at 28 points and have 11 points left over for random upgrades like havoc launchers on the rhinos. 3. You could upgrade the smaller raptor squad with special weapons. 30 points will get 3 melter or 3 plasma options with combis on the champ, which could be helpful early on. 4. Combi weapons on the rhinos is an option, though I don't recommend it. If you absolutely have to upgrade them, a second combi bolter and havoc launcher each works fairly well. That's another 24 points for some decent DACA. Regarding how the list plays, I think the tweaks I suggest only further improve Luke's intentions. Khan still provides rerolls to the heavy guns, the Raptors still provide an early threat, the Slaughterer and Terminators still do their job. I think I would personally frenzy both Raptors, the small blob to an objective, the large blob to force my opponent to deal with them and potentially threaten an alpha target, or even clear OBSEC infantry units early on. Between 20 odd Raptors and a Helldrake, most enemy armies could be pretty tied up assuming charges are successful, which could buy that crucial extra movement phase for those Berserkers and Butchers to get into position for the mid-round coup d'etat. Overall, I think the list has some great potential. I love the inclusion of the Rapier batteries and I think they can fill multiple roles. Quad heavy bolters with that sort of volume can threaten vehicles and other tough units and are super efficient against MEQs right now. The laser destroyer with 3 shots is a legit option, especially with Khan there to increase its accuracy, making 3 hits a much more common occurrence. Look, whatever your decision on how to play this is, I'd love to hear how it goes for you when you get to finally use it. I've toyed with including multiple rapiers in my lists, but I'm always so frustrated by the limited heavy slots available. Okay, hopefully this sort of analysis is helpful to everybody, but most importantly to Luke. Remember, if you want an in-depth video analysis of your lists, it's a perk unique to patrons in the Chosen of Khorne and 8-fold tiers of my Patreon. Alright, that wraps it up for today folks. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, please consider hitting that thumbs up and subscribing. If you didn't, well, hit the thumbs down, it's all good. Until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, and kill main burn.